Hi everyone, Adam MacMillan here from Surfside Ceramics again with part 2 of my crystalline glaze video series. The second part is on how to separate and finish the bottoms of your pieces after you've had a successful crystal firing. Now, if you recall my last video, I went through a number of different steps of how to prepare your bisqueware and your foot ring and your pedestal so that when they go together, if the glaze flows properly and everything goes right, to make the separation process and the finishing process that much easier. And these are some of the pieces that I showed you last time. I'm going to go through some of these steps here and finish them. And so looking at these pieces, I have pieces that were prepared a number of different ways. This is one of the vases from last time that had a little bit of undercut on the foot. And as you can see, I have a catch ring here and the pedestal here, a nice buildup of glaze that went off the pot. This piece came out, I think, pretty nice. I have another piece that's a bowl, and this is where I reused a catch ring and I stacked it. And I like doing this with the bowls because it gives me a little bit better of an angle of attack when I'm trying to remove the foot ring on the piece. You can see the bottom of the bowl is about here, and my second foot ring is here, and my reused catcher and catch basin are here. And then this is another piece that I used for, I think, another quick video on Instagram where I'd thrown this piece and put a nice little swirl on it to give it some movement. And again, this is a smaller piece where I reused a catch basin. So the bottom of this bottle is about here, my first ring is here, and the reused catch basin is there. Like I said, I just try to be a little economical with my catch basins. You don't have to reuse them, and you can use any of the other methods that I showed you in the previous video for making your supports and catchers for the glaze flow. Now, for the other items I'm going to be using here, and I won't necessarily use all these things, but I want to show you all the equipment that I use. The banding wheel, and this is for rotating the piece while I heat it up to remove the catcher. I have a little carbide scribe. You also can get diamond scribes, little window cutters, and sometimes you might want to use these to score along the edge of your piece if you're having a little difficulty doing the separation, and you can use this to score or scratch the surface of the glaze right along the joint. Just a couple different options for torches. Initially I was using the little flambe torch, and it gives a nice controlled flame. You can see really focused. It takes a little longer, but it does put less heat into the pot, so you don't have to worry quite as much about thermally shocking and cracking the bottom of your piece. This is my kind of go-to torch that I use for throwing, obviously, but what I typically use for separation. Another piece of equipment that I showed you last time on flattening your pieces, but I have a steel plate that I've bonded to a plastic bat, and then I have two different grit magnetic dot discs for lapping the bottom. This one I believe is a 60 grit. This will just magnetically snap on there. And then for my second stage of finishing, I have a 180 grit. For some of the problematic pieces, if they moved a little bit in the glaze, it really got in the joint and I feel like I can't separate it, I have an angle grinder, a right angle grinder with a little 4-inch diamond blade on the end. Sometimes these are helpful, they're very aggressive, but you can use these to get in there. You can see with this piece, I couldn't actually do it. It'd be really tough to get in there just because of the size. Maybe on this smaller piece, you can see that there, yes, I could get in there and score that if I was having trouble separating, but this is a very aggressive tool and it has to be used with a bit of care. And these last two grinding wheels here are things that I use for beveling the edge. So I have two different 6-inch metal bonded diamond wheels. One's a little bit finer than the other. This one's the finer one actually. And I'll use these for grinding the bottom of the pot and also running along the surface of the bottom of the pot if I do get some glaze buildup. And then I have another wheel. I only use one of the wheels here. This is an 8-inch silicon carbide wheel. The silicon carbide actually works really nice for grinding crystalline glazes. It gives kind of that right balance of just enough aggressive grinding action, but not being too harsh that causes a lot of chipping. This other style, the oxide, I think it's an aluminum oxide bonded wheel, these don't really work well enough. They're not quite hard enough, so I really don't recommend using these. I recommend with going either with a silicon carbide wheel or with some diamond wheels, metal bonded diamond wheels. Both of these wheels, you know, they might sound like they're expensive. I think you can get a wheel like this for about 40 bucks, and the diamond bonded wheels, if you get them on sale, you might be able to get them for about 100. The most expensive ones are these diamond lapidary wheels, and depending on the design and things like that, they could be anywhere from about $100 up to about $400, but they really do make all the difference, and they last virtually forever. I think I've been using each of these wheels for about 10 years. Some of the other finishing pieces of equipment that I'll use are these nice little sanding blocks that come in different grits. You can see I got a 60, 120, 200, and 400. And these just help if you got to do a little hand polishing on the edges, little touch-up spots. Other people will also do a really nice job and polish the whole foot ring while spinning them on a griffin grip or something. And you can really get some glass-like finishes, really nice finishes on your bottomry pots if you want to go that far. Final thing, safety equipment, safety glasses, and respirator for all the dust we're going to be generating. Those are very important, or you have to be really good at holding your breath. But definitely always have the safety glasses. There'll be a lot of flying glass particles that can happen in any stages here, and you obviously don't want to get those things in your eyes and end up in the emergency room, or even worse, with loss of vision. So with all that being said, I'm going to start on the first step. And I'm going to separate the three of these using my method. And again, there are a number of methods people use, like I said, to score. Other people will chisel. Other people will slam them on the concrete floor and hope that they separate. But I'm showing you my method that I has found works really nice for me when I prepare the pots the way that I showed you in my previous video. Now when I do this, I'm going to torch the bottom here. And I'm trying to keep the heat out of the piece, because if you do get the bottom of the piece too hot, you can crack it. And really what you're trying to do is you're trying to get your ring to expand more than your pot and to just pop. And you'll start to hear the cracking and maybe even a pop of separation. So I'm going to focus my flame down here, and really even, you know, if it's a smaller one, into the catch basin, because I don't care if I break the sacrificial piece. I just don't want to break my pot now that it's come out so nice with all the work into it. So I'm going to spin. You see I'm heating up on this bottom ring and trying to keep the flame off of the bottom of my pot. And usually you'll start to hear it crack a little bit. You might have just heard that. That's that bottom ring expanding. There we go. And that may have broken. Yep, that broke at the bottom catch ring, and you can see where that separated. But that's all right. I'm going to give this a little tap. And this should just come right off. There we go. And you can see I have a nicely separated piece. There's a little bit of the edge of my foot ring that's still stuck on the pot. I do have this really sharp edge, and I can feel my piece. You know, I didn't get much heat into there. It's a little warm, but it's not hot. And this piece really separated quite nicely. This will be very easy to grind and to finish. All right, I'm going to do my next one here, this little bottle. And again, I'll use the other torch here just for fun. Hopefully it has enough gas. You can see it's a much smaller flame, so I'm putting it much closer to the joint. I'm watching the edge of that flame and really trying to keep it off the bottom of my piece. Let's see how long this takes, and I generally prefer the bigger torch. All right, I haven't heard any little cracking yet, but I'm going to give it a tap and just see what happens. And you can often tell when you're tapping, you can hear that tone start to change, and that tone means there's a crack that's spreading. There we go. I think this will separate. Okay, so here's a great example of one that did not separate that well. You can see here's the bottom of my pot, but I still do have a good bit of the foot ring, I'm sorry, of the pedestal that's stuck to my foot of the piece. So here's my foot over here. But not a problem on this one. I'll be able to get this off very easily with the bench grinder. And lastly, and this is the one, like I mentioned in the previous video, these ones are the toughest. This one might give me the most difficulty. because this undercut builds up the glaze a little bit thicker, it can stick on there a little tighter, but we're going to see what happens. Now with this piece I have one ring, so I'm really going to shoot this flame down into the catcher and at the foot ring and really try to not hit the pot at all. And I won't be surprised, because of the glaze thickness in here, if this thing just cracks and pops, if the catcher just completely cracks and pops. So let's see what happens. Able to hear that. I hear some faint little cracking going on. Seems like it's still on there pretty tight. I'm going to heat this up a little more. Cracks there. There we go. All right, and again, this one, and you can see, as I predicted, because of that undercut, it really did not get a great separation. I did take away a little bit of the foot here, but that's all right. I account for it with this bevel because that's normally an area I'd grind away anyways. And again, you can see a good bit of the foot ring came around. And if I look right in here, I can see a little bit of glaze did seep through, and that was part of the reason why my pedestal stuck on there. This piece got a lot of heat into it. I'm going to leave it upside down, and we'll come back to this one last. All right, so that's step one. Now, follow me out to the bench grinder, which I'm going to put outside because of all the dust that it creates, and put on my safety gear. All right, so we're out here. I've set up the bench grinder outside. Definitely want to be in a well-ventilated area outside, or in a room with a lot of air movement where you can control the dust. And I'm getting ready to grind my pieces. I'm going to start with the diamond, because with a couple pieces that had a bit of the foot ring stuck to them, this will help me get the material out of there a little bit faster. And I'm going to do a little bit of finishing with the silicon carbide. Now, one of the things that's really important to prevent chipping when you're doing the grinding is you have a hard clay material with pretty good toughness, porcelain, and on the glaze you have generally a very soft, glassy material with really no toughness whatsoever. So that being said, you want to be pushing or grinding into the clay rather than off of the glaze in order to really retain a good edge and prevent blowout from your glaze and screwing up the bottom of your pot. So what I mean by that is, when I'm grinding, I want to be grinding like this. My wheel's going to be spinning here, and so I want the grinding action to happen into the pot as opposed to going like this and coming off the pot. You're definitely going to get more chipping and a lower quality edge by going that direction. And the other thing is, by grinding in, you have better control. You can push up against the wheel and you can just see what you're doing. Here, you're likely to get the piece to roll out. Once I get it all, the edge and all these pieces off, then you can come at it a little bit flatter, but you still want to be focused on grinding into that edge. All right? I'm going to be doing a little bit of a rolling action like this as I grind the piece to try to keep as smooth of a bevel as I can. And after, like I said, after I'm done with the diamond, I'll move over to the silicon carbide on any of the pieces where I feel I want a little bit of a finer finish. So with that, I'm going to put on my mask and I'm going to start grinding. Alright, so this piece is pretty good for here. My last step will be on the silicon carbide after I finish these next two pieces. So here's the next piece. Ground nice and flush. Just a little bit of edge beveling left to do. This will go pretty quick. I'm going to use the silicon carbide wheel to just bevel my edges with a little finer of a finish. Alright, I'm here for my second to last stage here for finishing the bottom of my pieces. I just ground the edges and beveled them to the best that in the near rough shape that I could outside on the bench grinder. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the flat lapping disc to do it in two stages, one course to get the bottom of the pot nice and flat, and then on the final piece I'm going to really round out that edge to make it nice and smooth and have a nice radius to it. Similar to the grinding wheel, it's important for control of the pot that you are moving the piece counter to the direction that it's spinning. So, for example, my wheel, I'm going to move it very slowly, is spinning like this. I want to have a firm grip on the pot, opposing the force. Okay? I don't need a lot of downward pressure, and I want to move, keeping the piece flat in a rotation around the lap like so. If I move with this, if it catches, and I learned this the hard way, it will bite and the pot will go flying out of your hand and crash on the other side of the studio. So you really want to try to keep the piece as flat as you can and then move it in a circular direction counter to the disc. You can also keep it in one space and rotate it. It takes a little bit more skill, I feel, but this point is spinning faster than this point, and if you don't move the pot, you're going to end up with a pot that you wear a flat in it so it leans one way. So you can't use that to your advantage. If you have a pot that's already leaning one way and you want to try to correct it, you can straighten it back out. Now, some people will set up a little dripper system with a little hose that drips sporadically on the middle to clear away the grinding debris from here. I just pour a little water and keep the bottom of the pot wet to keep the dust down and to keep my diamond lubricated so it cuts nicely. I do this at full speed, and you'll see that initially it is a little wobbly trying to get it situated, but with a nice even pressure and circular motion it will start grinding nice and flat. I'm going to move these pieces out of the way so that I don't hit them, and I'm going to get started. Again, light pressure. The more aggressive your diamond is, the fewer passes you'll need. Also, obviously, the bigger or thicker your foot ring, the more passes you'll need. And if you look closely, you can see I've worn this nice flat, perfectly flat all the way around. Because my bevel is not perfectly circular, it doesn't look perfectly circular yet, but I'm going to take care of all that. So I'm going to do a few more passes here. Go. I have a nice flat bottom to start working with. Okay, now I'm going to do my next piece. Do the little bottle. You can see here there's still a little glaze remnant, but that will be gone in a moment. Go. Very nice flat bottom on this piece. Looks great. Last one. again, nice and flat, looks perfect. Okay. This is the reason I like the magnetic backed laps, even though they're a little bit more expensive. I can just pull that off, put this on, and on to the next stage. Alright, now one other technique I'm going to do here as I bevel the edge, same kind of thing as the grinding wheel outside, where I always wanted my edge with the glaze leading into the cutting action, so in this case here, and I over time have learned this technique to swirl the pot in a certain way so that my glaze edge is always going into the grit. So you'll see I'll do this weird wiggling motion, and that's just my technique to get a nice full round radius on the edge of the piece. I'll start going flat. See there, I have a nice flat surface with a nice smooth round edge, no chips on there. It really looks pretty perfect, and this will also give it a little bit of strength for any of the future use, so you can prevent chipping of that edge with that nice radius on there. Looks good to me. All right, on to the next piece. Starting flat. I'm going to do a little different technique for doing the edge that might be easier when you first start. I'm going to hold it here, and don't worry about this, you know, it might scrape your knuckles a little bit, but diamond is not like a saw, it's not going to cut you up, especially the finer diamond. So don't worry too much about your fingers, but if you are, put some leather gloves on. And so you can see here, if you want to look down at this angle, I'm just rotating the piece right on this edge, all right, as it turns. And I'm being careful, I don't want to hit the side of my pot and scratch up the side of the pot. So I'm kind of keeping my hand underneath. I've certainly scratched up a couple pots, getting a little too aggressive on that angle. Right here. Rotate slowly. Right on that edge. All right. See, very nice little bevel on the edge of that pot. No chips. Looks perfect. And I am going to do my little swirl motion on this just to give it a little bit more rounded. Last piece that took a little bit of work, and I'm going to show you this one again. So we can see here little areas where a little clay chipped away right up here. Doesn't look like it's the prettiest thing it can be, but I'm going to take care of that. round edge. I still have one little divot there that I'm going to take care of by taking material off all the way around. Grip on the pot. Notice I'm not letting my hands leave it. Alright. And there we go. You can see that it's nicely flat and beveled pot. Sits nicely. Doesn't rock. It looks great. Alright, and for the last step, I just have a little bit of my glue that I use to bond my rings on there. I'm going to clean that up, and then I'll be done. A little bit of Scotch-Brite works nicely. Oh, and the other thing to show here, I mentioned my diamond pads. At this point, you're going to want to use something very fine, a 200 or 400. If you did have a little spot in the edge, a little chip that you wanted to clean up, you can just use this little pad, clean it up, wet or dry. These are very nice. And just make sure you don't scratch the surface of your pot. And that's it. There we go. So here's my other piece. Quick little wipe with the Scotch-Brite. Get the little bit of pedestal glue out of there. And then on this piece, there's a nice little ring there. There we go. And you want to use Scotch-Brite at this step because it won't scratch your clay or your glazed surfaces. It's just enough to get that loose debris off there. There we go. A little bit of rinse. It's ready for the market. Thank you for watching. Bye.